This is Ready, Set, Renovate, a podcast delivering renovation, inspiration, and motivating you to put your home beautifying ideas into motion. Today, we're tackling an age-old question for contractor and client alike. How do you price a custom renovation? There are generally two options, a cost-plus approach or the fixed cost approach. As you'll hear, our guests Larry Myers of Ineo Builders and Steve Carson of Carson Spear Builders have given this topic serious thought and arrived at different answers. It's a candid and engaging look into what makes a good contractor tick. Let's get to it.
So glad I got these two guests here. These are guys that are at the top of the food chain in our area. They're very smart, very intelligent. This is Larry Myers, owner of Ineo. Make sure I get that right. He was educating me earlier on the correct pronunciation. Did I get it?
You got it perfect, yep.
All right. And we have Steve Carson with Carson Spears. They're both doing residential. Do you do any commercials, Steve?
We try not to.
You try to stay away from it?
We try to stay away from commercials as much as possible. We leave that to Larry.
There you go. Well, yeah, Larry was, and you do, some. You were telling me you just finished up a project on Verde, which.
Yeah, we're probably about half commercial in what we do as a company. So, but more on the custom side. So it kind of blends really well for what we do.
Nice. Well, guys, thank you so much for being on the show. It's very much an honor. Let's dive into the topic. What we want to talk about today is cost plus versus fixed cost pricing. Those are two distinct approaches to how we price projects. And I'll let you, Larry, kind of take over and tell us about the cost plus approach. That's what you utilize, correct?
Correct. We don't utilize it exclusively. Probably about half of what we do is a cost plus contract. But in a sense, a cost plus is what it sounds like. It's the cost of goods sold plus a fee on top of it. So it really is it's an open-ended contract. It's a very transparent contract. So clients in this case are seeing every invoice. They're seeing every charge that you have to justify every charge. So it can be a very challenging contract in a lot of ways, but it can be also very transparent, as I said, for the client.
And then you compare that to fixed cost. Give us a brief overview of what fixed cost entails.
Yeah, so fixed price is
Or fixed price.
a fixed price contract, however you want to word it, is where we basically come to an agreement on what the cost of the project is going to be before we start. And so, like Larry said, there's always pros and cons to each different model. We used to do a lot of cost plus contracts, and we've slowly migrated to doing just fixed price for a lot of different reasons that we'll get into in a little bit. But the biggest positive for us is that it's not open-ended like a cost plus contract. When we sign the deal, the client knows to the penny what it's going to cost. I mean, there's some very, very minor caveats to that, but there's some clarity, there's some certainty, there's some assurance as to what they're getting into.
Sure.
And they know that going in. And for us, it has made for a much better relationship during the build.
It makes sense. Have you always been cost plus, Larry? Or was there ever a time that you were fixed cost?
We do both.
Okay, so you can go both ways.
Absolutely. In commercial, you more often than not do fixed price or lump sum, whatever term you'd use. I was thinking back in preparation for this podcast, the first two contracts I ever signed 19 years ago were cost plus in commercial. So I guess it has been part of our company since day one. But we're specific as to the project and what type of project we're doing and the relationship with the client as to whether or not we're going to go cost plus or fixed fee lump sum. So we're open to both, and we use them both and utilize them both. So they do have advantages, as Steve said.
So when you go with the cost plus and you're talking price up front with the client, are you finding more often than not you're pretty much nailing what they can expect down pretty well, or are you seeing a lot of surprises? I know we're in a kind of a tumultuous time where prices are going crazy with materials up and down. It's a roller coaster. But on the front end, someone's looking for assurance. I want to know that I'm not going to have to pay, several $100,000 more than what I'm expecting to pay. is it pretty much on target for the most part? I know you've been doing it a while, so I would guess you can pretty much get it close.
Well, we would say that we would get it close, but the reason why we like to engage in cost-plus contracts is because some of the projects we get involved with aren't fully developed design-wise. So if a client comes to us and they've got a full set of plans and they know, and even specifications that the architect has laid out with them, but there's already the beginning conversation of, well, we're going to do paneling in this room, but we don't know if it's Wormy chestnut, we don't know if it's French oak, English oak, we don't know if it's a faux finish. That's where we start thinking, okay, this is probably better for a cost plus because it allows them the flexibility and not to worry about us knowing specifically on the front end every detail, or at least the majority of the details, other than the traditional allowances you would have in a lump sum contract.
Which I can see the benefit of that, because oftentimes getting into a project, they change their mind.
Exactly.
And so there is tremendous benefit.
And that's the main reason why we do a cost plus is because I don't like change orders. And not because I can't do them or we don't understand how to price them. It's just some of our clients, especially on the larger or higher end projects, they want the flexibility to be able to change. The designer halfway through the project says, I was in Atlanta or I was on vacation and I saw this and the scope of work or the original design intent of a room has completely changed. So the change order now becomes, I don't want to say punitive to a client, but they feel like, oh, what's that fee really include? I mean, is it really a fair number? Do they give me the full credit?
Yeah.
Or and is it really cost this much? So that's why we like the cost plus contract, because it allows them to see everything. So they make a real time decision. Hey, this is what we originally had budgeted. This is where it's tracking now with the design, and it's open and transparent, and they're able to make that decision. They feel like they're a part of that decision. So to answer your earlier question, are we able to nail our numbers pretty close in the beginning? We feel we are, but our clients almost always go over budget, and so that's why we like to use the cost.
But the burden's on them, and they feel a sense of control, I guess, going through.
Correct.
Steve, let me ask you, with fixed cost, do you find that sometimes you're having to eat what you didn't expect to cost as much as it cost, or maybe it goes the other way? There's a windfall, and there's a bigger savings than you calculated.
So the short answer is yes and no. When we used to do cost plus, a lot of the reason that we did it was we weren't as confident in our pricing as we are now. Now, having done it for 20 years, we've got a good handle on what things are going to cost. And so we found that during that transition period where we were doing both pricing models were within 1%. So
Interesting.
it
Wow.
didn't. It
So
didn't
very,
really,
very close. A lot of similarities.
Yeah,
huh?
it doesn't really matter what pricing model we use, whether we were doing it cost plus or whether we were doing a fixed price. We're pricing it the same.
Yeah.
And really, it has more to do with the interaction with the client and their comfort level than it really did as to what the real costs were versus what we might make or what we might eat or those kind of things. It really is a function more of the client relationship piece.
Sure.
And so there are occasions, and really on almost every line item, there's always going to be line items in our estimates where some were a little high, some were a little low, but almost universally they wash out. Yeah,
That's a good point. You've been doing it for a while, so you kind of know what you're doing. Both you guys been in the business for a long time, and understand pricing. I mean, you understand how much things cost. It's just now we're entering some volatile markets, it seems like, and it might get a little tricky at times. Do you, with your client, do you feel that going a fixed cost route or fixed price route, once it gets into the build phase, build goes quicker? Or does it?
Well,
Because
yes.
that could be a hurdle with the cost plus is you got to constantly prod them. Hey, come on now, make a decision.
absolutely.
Let's keep this moving. Whereas if everything's decided on the front end, you know the cost, you just turnkey.
Yeah, there's a couple of pieces to that. So in order for us to make a fixed price work, we have to lean really heavily on the clients to make as many decisions as they can on the front end. So
Agreed.
if they're not making decisions and things are open-ended and there's a huge list of allowances, then they're losing some of the benefits of doing a fixed price. Because now all those allowances are now subject to the price fluctuations that you see. So a big part of what we do when we do the fixed price model is we want to have as much information as we can. We tell clients ambiguity is expensive. So
Let's get clear.
figure out, let's get clear as to what you want, what we're doing, all those kind of things, and let's nail it down. That way you've got clarity as to what you're spending. Now, I've never had a client not change something. I mean, there's mechanisms in there to make changes or make adjustments and all those
Change
kind of
orders,
things.
yeah.
Change orders. But we're very transparent on the change orders. Like this is what we had in for that piece. This is what you want, and the change and what that's going to be, a pro or con. And we show it all to them. We let them decide what they want to do before we ever do the work. So in that sense, those small pieces that do get changed are pretty transparent, but they have a much greater certainty of what their cost is going to be. When we did Cost Plus, we found that clients made a lot more changes and they were a lot less likely to stay in budget
Interesting.
because they went into it with a mindset that it was open-ended. And a lot of times we felt like we were the guy on the stagecoach pulling back the reins, and they were going as fast as they could over the edge of the cliff.
Yeah.
And so
It requires a lot of conversation, I'm sure. Like
Oh, yeah.
in the moment conversation,
Yeah.
you know what you're doing is going to impact your cost this way.
yeah,
right?
for us, when it's cost plus, and every line item can float, they felt the freedom to just change. And once you got into the project and once the build starts happening, people were getting excited and they get caught up in the moment and their budgets would just take off.
Yeah.
Whereas a fixed price, they've made all those decisions on the front end. If they want to make a change, they get a physical change order and they feel it sting a little bit.
Yeah.
And so the changes that they do make are the ones that they really want, that they really feel strongly about and they want to move forward on. But the ones that are just kind of spur of the moment, whim kind of things,
Yeah.
they're much less likely to do that.
Sure.
So our fixed price people stay much closer to their original intent than the cost plus clients were. And it made for happier relationships too. When
Yeah.
clients stay closer to their budget, they're happier, we're happier, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, Larry, to you, I know so much of this, what both you guys do, requires just a level of trust and relationship. Obviously, if you don't have that, you know, whatever pricing approach you take is going to have some challenges. It's going to start falling apart if you don't have that character, the trust that you build over time. How do you keep the project moving forward? How do you keep that relationship strong throughout the course of a project with your client?
It's communication, and it's weekly meetings. It's understanding and trying to stay ahead as much as you can of where the designers are. Because ultimately, like Steve said, it's cost plus projects do take get a life of their own. They will almost always go over budget, and not to say that I like that. It's just I like the process of allowing my clients and their designers to kind of dream. And what I've found is really special projects almost always are never fully understood in the beginning. It takes that little. Sometimes they have to get into it to really know, or maybe they have to talk themselves into it. I mean, you've probably experienced this too, Steve. We're not going to do that, and then halfway through, we're going to go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
Because this is the one time we're building. So, in a sense,
Don't want to pass the point of no return. Right?
well, and what you want is you want clients to get what they want, and sometimes they have to talk themselves into it, or they're into the process and they realize we're just going to do it.
Yeah.
So Steve's correct. Cost plus projects almost always go over budget. They take longer. There's no question about it, because you don't have all your answers on the front end. If you don't like that kind of construction, then don't even bother with it, because that's where those projects are headed.
Sure.
One other thing, we will never do a smaller project cost plus. If it's and I don't know what that number actually is, but almost always our cost plus projects are very complicated, and they're usually on the more expensive side. That's when we feel it's a good fit, especially if that client has very active designers, and that's probably another key. If the builder's controlling the design, i.e. design build, then cost plus may not make as much sense. The contracts I'm talking about always have independent architects and independent interior designers. So we're working as a team. No one's working under us.
I see.
And so as a result, that's why we feel it's the open end is very important. Back to your trust point, trust is critical for any relationship in business, and it's even more so in cost plus. So we work very hard to develop concise and good budgets, accurate budgets. And then we're also very intentional about if there's a scope change, what we would call a change order. Let's just say you decide to completely do a different material that's significantly more expensive, we like to actually readjust the budget so that the client sees that aggregate number. In a sense, we're actually signing a change order, so they're not in their mind having to, okay,
You're answering the question, what is the impact here?
correct. So we want them to see the impact. So they get a variance report every month of where we're tracking within their budgets. And if we decide to add something from Italy, for instance, it's significantly more expensive, we will then agree to that adjusted budget price. And so we increase that. So they're seeing that. In a sense, they're signing a change order. We're just showing it in aggregate for them to be able to track it better. And then so that we don't look back and wait a second, we went way over budget on this. Well, yeah, remember we decided to go with a different material. So we kind of defend ourselves.
Absolutely.
So we're
you have a
recalibrating
paper
the budget.
trail. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So in that model, it sounds like there's a lot of engagement with the client, hand holding. Compare that to fixed cost. Steve, once you get that design package locked down, once you get that fixed cost, is it, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Client, see you at the end, we'll take it from here? Or are you still engaging a whole lot through the course of build?
No, on some level, again, that's yes and no question. So the clients are still very involved in the build, but we feel like our pricing model makes it more fun for them to be involved in the build. So the numbers part, for the most part, is taken care of. So we're still doing the heavy on the client communication. You know, what's coming up, what's involved in the schedule, what happened last week, what happened this week, what's happening next week, what are the allowances you got to make decisions on. All those conversations are still happening. But what's not happening is the thinking in the back of the client's mind, well, what am I spending? What is this going to cost me?
Where's this going? Yeah.
You know, and they're able to come and visit the site. They walk through the house. They can see things being built, and they can just enjoy the process and have fun, and they don't have to worry about, oh my gosh, look at those wasted 2x4s over there. Is the client going to charge me for those? Or, you know, well, I didn't know we were doing that. Am I getting gigged for that?
Yeah.
You know, there's a freedom in that we've already agreed to a price. They know what they're spending, and so the process for them is much more enjoyable. It gives them the freedom to enjoy the build and enjoy the process and enjoy the walkthroughs.
And I'm sure a lot of that depends on client personality too. Some client personalities, like your engineers and architects, they want to know exactly what's going on, where you're going, how this is going to end.
And really, to that point, a lot of clients that we have that are accountants or engineers don't want to do a fixed price. They want to do a cost plus because they want to
be hands-on.
They want to dive into the minutia of every single line item. And we might have, our estimates might have 600-700 different line items in them.
Wow.
Down to drywall, mud, and nails and all that kind of stuff. And a big part of the reason why we moved from a cost plus is it was creating such an administrative burden on our side.
Sure.
To deal with all those different things.
Yeah.
And to, you know, have a client come to us and say, well, I mean, I saw you're spending $2.38 on screws. I saw them for $2.50 at Lowe's.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we could get them at Lowe's for $2.50, but now I got to pay a guy to drive over to Lowe's, and so our goal is to get you a good value.
Right.
But we didn't want to create an antagonistic relationship with clients, to where, you know, they're picking and choosing different line items to focus on, because what would happen every time we did cost plus, they would be excited about the things that came under, and they would want those credits, and then the things that would go over,
they would challenge.
They would be frustrated about, and they wouldn't want to pay them.
Sure.
And so whether it was our fault or somebody else's fault. And so for us, we just moved away from all of that. And it created much better client relationships. It shifted the risk to us.
It attracted the clients you wanted too,
Yeah,
right?
it did.
Well, is that your experience, Larry, that the clients attracted to the cost plus are those engineers, are they accountants, are the ones that want to be very hands-on, you know, in the whole pricing process?
Not for us, no.
It hasn't been? Okay.
No, but I would say that I would agree with Steve that from a clerical or administrative standpoint, cost plus invoicing alone is significantly more time consuming for the builder than any fixed fee. You're just going through a schedule of values and putting fixing a percentage complete of HVAC. We have to give every invoice. We have to show that. We do QuickBooks reports. We do the variance report. Much more time consuming on our end. But what I would not disagree with Steve, our experience is different. I've never once had a client come to me and ask me about a price of 2x4s. I don't.
They're not challenging that.
They're not, and it's probably just the type of client we're working with, because I think going into this, the expectation is they're going to get what they want. Now, maybe these are a little more bespoke or a little more higher end, so they've done 4 or 5 homes, so they already know the process. So it's not like this is new to them,
Right.
and they kind of know that for the most part, we're going to be pretty close to what our original budget was.
And just for clarification, both these guys are offering luxury products. I mean, they're not anything like your track home or, your little kitchen upfit. I mean, these are major, very nice projects that you guys are doing. So
I would agree,
sorry.
and not to say that you can't do a nice home with a lump sum, because we clearly have done those and we've bid them out through architects. But our experience is that client that wants the cost plus isn't going to scrutinize us. And it tends to be on our higher end of our projects that we do ultimately.
Yeah.
So they've already experienced it, and honestly, they have the money to do it. That's the surprising part. We've given price increases or adjustments to budgets of requests, and we're thinking, are they going to go for this? I know the architect wants this. Never had a problem. Most of my clients don't balk. It surprised me to the point where it doesn't surprise me anymore. So I guess it's just who we're working with. We don't have
Makes
that
a difference.
scrutiny.
Yeah.
Now, as long as we're obviously honest and we're doing what we say we're going to do, or if there is a hiccup, we immediately correct that or identify it and explain why this was different. But as long as you're doing that, our issue's not been the lack of, or them scrutinizing us too much.
And
I
I would say our
ahead.
experience hasn't been as wonderful as his. I mean, I've got 2 clients right now that they're both building $4 million houses. One of them is exactly what Larry's saying. The other one, I mean, needles in on every penny. And so it's a lot of it is client
There's that
personality.
personality,
And
yeah.
I found it more as a personality thing than I have as a project specific or level of finish kind of.
That's such a good point.
Yeah.
That it's not a one size fits all.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people that thrive more in one versus the other.
Well, I was going to speak to what Larry was saying about the administrative costs. So what I mentioned earlier is by going fixed price for us, for Carson Spear, we're absorbing a lot of the risk.
Sure.
So if we sign a contract and we've priced our lumber, we've priced our drywall, we've priced all those things, and 3 months later, the
Lumber
price
skyrockets.
and I have to eat some money on that, that is a risk that we're willing to take because we found that it more than paid for itself in the administrative costs that we were saving.
Yeah.
We looked at our hours and our time.
Is there a threshold though, Steve, where it's going so high you have to go back to the client and say, we'll need some help covering
There's
this?
a threshold where we would like to go back to the client, but we've agreed. I mean, we signed the paper. We signed a contract that, hey, we're going to build your house for this number. We're assuming the risk. And like I said, we've done it for 20 years. We kind of know what's happening, and we look at things like lumber futures and things like that. So, especially in today's market with supply chain issues, a lot of times the day we sign the contract, we're ordering as much as we can, so that the price that we agreed to on the contract is the price that I can get it for. And also because things that we used to wait 4 weeks on, we're now waiting 6 months on. So we do see a lot more front-loading orders and things, and we end up storing materials or whatever, to get the pricing correct, but also to make sure we got availability.
Yeah.
But back to the administrative part, I mean, we looked at the time and the hours that project managers, that office people, the bookkeepers were spending on doing big spreadsheets and the variant stuff. And if we saved $20,000 on an administrative cost of a job by not having to do cost plus, that more than makes up for the fact that if we end up eating 10,
Right.
because we got a number wrong somewhere, it still ended up being a net gain for us, and it made for happier clients. So it was a win-win.
Is your model more of a rare thing, a unicorn, so to speak, in the realm that you work? Are most GCs your size doing fixed cost or cost plus? Or?
And Larry might could speak to it a little bit too. I think what I see more often than not is new construction people do fixed price, remodels do cost plus, is what I see most of the time.
And it makes sense because you have much more control over new construction.
Yep.
Whereas a renovation can take on a life of its own.
Yeah.
It usually does. But I would agree with Steve, but I also think we see even on new construction, like the most recent projects that we've bid that are pretty nice, all of the contractors that were asked to bid, all were proposing cost plus.
Interesting.
That's just the world. Those are the ones we're going up against, or the projects we're
Yeah.
engaging in. Doesn't mean they're better. It's just that's just
Yeah. No,
that's
that
just
is an
client
interesting
seeing
insight.
that. Or the architect. Oftentimes, the architect pushes this too, because if like for instance, I don't do any work in Highlands, but you get into Highlands where you're getting to $1,200-$1,400 a square foot houses, partly because it's so expensive to build there. Most people up there don't even actually engage in the project. They actually have an assistant. This is their fifth home.
Oh, yeah.
So
They're
cost
in
plus is
New York
almost-
City somewhere.
yes. Cost plus is like the standard up there. So we see that a little bit in this market, just depending on the client. And I want to say how savvy they are, just what they're looking for and what they want. And if they've already done a cost plus project, then it doesn't scare them. And they just think that's the norm.
That's so crazy for me because our experience is 100% different.
Really? Well,
it's the same-
let me
it's the
ask, and this
same-
may
Where
answer
do
that.
you live? I'm just kidding.
It's
We're
just,
both in the Greenville upstate area of South
we're
Carolina.
both
here.
building like really high-end
yes.
luxury houses.
And we work with similar architects.
Yeah,
Actually, we
yeah.
overlap with
It's
some
funny that
architects.
my experience has been completely different.
Well, let me say one more thing,
Yeah.
too, Will. This is to the administrative cost. If you want to do a cost plus project and it's on a lower number, let's just say under $500,000, it's hard to really charge the fee you need to charge to recoup, all of the all the back office time and energy that you're going to spend for it. So ultimately, that's why I made the comment. It usually works better for us on a larger project because you can't go into a client on a cost plus for $500,000 and say it really needs to be 25%. There's no market for that to be 25% that I've seen, or whatever number. Whereas a lot of remodelers that will do a fixed fee on a very small number, those fees that they have to charge just because of startup and then closing eyes, those are higher than what you would on the $4 million project. So it's hard to show a client, in a cost plus nature, this is what it needs to be. They'll more often than not they'll balk at that. So that's why we don't really engage in them. Plus, to Steve's point, we kind of already know those projects well enough. We can do our homework. We can figure it out. We can make sure if we need a little contingency, and we can come out okay on those projects.
Well, and it brings up a good point. You mentioned, bidding against other GCs. Will you guys, some GCs won't even entertain a client if it's going to turn into a bidding competition. They're like, before I put this much legwork into it, I need some commitment from you that you're going to stick with me. Is that the case for Carson Spear? Or?
Yeah, we don't bid projects. What we do
So
is
if you know there's another GC, you're out.
Yeah.
Is that, yeah.
More or less what we tell a client to do is interview all the different builders that you're considering, go look at their work, do all your due diligence, talk to their references, talk to the architects, do all the background that you need to do, and then pick who you're most comfortable with and move forward with them. Because it's almost, regardless of how much legwork you put into, regardless of how hard you try, you're never going to get apples to apples. There's more than one way.
And that's a very good point. There's no two renovators, no two builders that are going to deliver the same product ever.
Everybody does things a little bit differently. And so you need to figure out when you're doing a construction project, whether you want to or not, you're about to become family for 6 months, a year, some of these bigger projects, 2 years. And so if you're just doing a race to the bottom as to who will do it the cheapest, you're going to be miserable.
You're going to lose.
You're going to be miserable for
Yes.
2 years. And so for us, we tell them find a comfort level with who you want to work with, and then work with that person to get the price where you want it.
Yes.
That's the model we go to. And if someone comes to us and they say, hey, we want you to price these drawings, and we got 5 other people pricing it, we just tell them we're probably not the best fit for you, because we're not trying to build the cheapest product possible. We're not trying to do it as low end as possible. Like, we want to build you something that you're proud of and that you'll be happy with 20 years from now.
Fully custom. Yeah.
Fully custom, and we're probably just not a good fit.
That brings up another question. So going into, a bidding competition, are you doing a whole lot of legwork, throwing your hat in the ring? like a whole lot of number crunching, a whole lot of collecting of information and material, info for that? I mean, are you putting a lot of effort into
Absolutely.
that?
But
Okay.
let me clarify, we rarely do bid projects, or we rarely will engage in a bid project. So to Steve's point, we're the same. We view it the same way. We're looking for more negotiated. In fact, the vast majority of our work, 90% is negotiated. And if a client's, and if we do engage in a bid, it's usually just a bid to kind of it's part of that kind of dating process, if you will, just to kind of get to know. They want to see some numbers, and we want to know who the other bidders are. We'll never do it if it's more than 2 others, ever. If they're 3 or 4 or 5, 6, they're just looking for a number. That's not, we're not for you. And we want to make sure that those contractors are like-minded. So we know who our competition is. We know who does quality work and who may do quality work but is going to be a little more price conscious. We're not going to engage in that at all. We're not going to waste our time. So we're only going to, and there's only probably about a handful of other builders that we would actually really go up against. But again, you're looking at if we end up doing a bid, it is a traditional bid. We're spending 3-4 weeks on some of these projects, bidding them out like you would if it was a negotiated. It is a risk, no question about it. And we win some and we lose some. It's unfortunately we found that that's part of the market that we're in. At least the clients we're engaging with. But more often than not, even if you win the bid, you're still going to be negotiating. That project's going to change. So it's just trying to minimize that bid part. And we don't engage in them very often. We're very particular about if we will engage in them. But we do occasionally. It's not our preferred method, though. We would rather negotiate and then have that relationship, because it is by far the better way to engage with a client.
Absolutely. Once you get into the project, how much of your time is spent on the numbers? Steve mentioned with fixed cost, one of the benefits is front end, you do all the legwork, or the majority of the legwork, I should say. But for cost plus, are you spending 30% of your time in the books, or do you have a team where you just turn that over to who's kind of managing that? How much of your time goes to constantly making adjustments in what they're paying?
I haven't quantified it for me personally, but my project managers and my office team will be the ones doing most of that budgeting. And for the most part, like Steve said earlier, even if it's cost plus, we still want to have our understanding of what we're building. So we're developing the budget, and we're actually trying to get contracts with subs as if this is what we're building. It's just that flexibility if they want to change. That's what changes for us. So we already have a plan. It's not open-ended in the sense that we just know we're building a 6,000 square foot house near Lake Kiwi. It's not that open-ended. We have detailed specifications. We already have detailed budgets. So at the end of the day, we're treating it as a lump sum, but then that flexibility when maybe sometimes 20-30% of the project changes. And that we've had projects, we've had cost plus go 35-40% over budget. But the scope of the work has increased significantly.
Yes.
That would have been a change order for a lump sum. So it's kind of the same thing. And one other point too, Steve made this earlier. We found too when we bid jobs, and it was a lump sum, we're bidding them the exact same way fee wise, especially the larger projects. Maybe in a lump sum you may have a small contingency that you're, but you're kind of also adding that a little bit in your cost plus budget because you want to be accurate for your client and you can't anticipate everything. So ultimately, we're striving for the same fee ultimately. And when we bid against other contractors, we know where our numbers are, and we know we're competitive, and we know their fees are probably very similar. So they really are similar fee structures. It's just how you do the contract ultimately.
Yeah.
Good
You're
stuff.
not significantly making more on a lump sum than you are on cost plus. Like you said, the builder's making the same. It's just a function of what the day-to-day logistics of the accounting parts and pieces,
Right.
how they work.
And again, the personality piece of the client.
Yes.
That makes.
And this goes back to the point I said this a couple times. To me, and the way we look at a cost plus, it really needs to be our 3 to 4 million and up contracts. Because if you're doing a bunch of $1 to $2 million contracts in cost plus, you could handle more work if they were all lump sum than if you were doing that cost plus. So that you got to be careful and pay attention to the fact that you don't want to bog yourself down. Yeah, you're making money, but there's also opportunity cost. You could maybe take on one more project with the same project management team and still give the same level of service and quality of build and interaction with your client. But because Cost Plus has so much more engagement and certain things get flushed out, it takes more time. So for us, it needs to be the larger projects.
Bigger revenue.
Yes. Otherwise we're losing the opportunity to do another project. And it's not all about revenue, but at the end of the day, we need, if we can be more efficient and take on one more project, why not? Sure. It's harder to take on multiple $2 million cost plus projects than it would be with lump sum, in my opinion.
Do you ever foresee making a change back to cost plus, or is this your chosen model from here until you hang it up?
We really like doing lump sum. It just it made our life so much easier as far as the bookkeeping and all that kind of stuff. It just made it easier and cleaner, and it made for better relationships with clients. I mean, we occasionally have clients that want to see some detail, and then we'll go back in and we'll dig into some stuff for them and show them that. But it would be difficult to go back, I think. There may be, never say never.
Sure.
I mean, there may be the rare project that comes along that it's a good fit, where the client's eager to get started, but they haven't decided a lot of things, and there's just a huge piece of it, a 30% that's unknown.
Yeah.
Well, that's difficult to put in a fixed price.
Sure.
But for us, it sure is a lot nicer and easier.
Yeah.
We have an architect we work with that his experience up in the Northeast was exclusively cost plus and with very high net worth individuals, stuff that we don't even doing here in Greenville. And he's kind of encouraged me that that's the model that works so well, because maybe it's because he doesn't necessarily know where the project is going to end up, or he's hoping the project will end up here. And so the open-ended nature of the cost plus allows them the flexibility. The client buys into everything, but maybe it's the slow burn, and it's incrementally, it just gets bigger or it gets more developed or more. And so I don't want to accuse architects, but in some cases, architects can't always sell everything to the client. Their dream, they're going to love this, but they're not buying it right now. And in a sense, it's kind of a slow burn to it. And so they build up to it. And that was his experience in the Northeast. And so we see that with some of the clients, especially the clients we work with him. It really is. Those are the projects that have a 30% change. Clients happy as can be. They love it. They just in the beginning didn't think they wanted to spend that much money, and they get in it, and this is what they really want. So that's where I've seen the benefit of that model. But again, they are on the larger size projects.
Well, gentlemen, it's been a true honor to have both you guys. I know both are very busy men, managing very successful businesses, and I'm grateful you guys took some time this morning to come in and provide a little education and insight and perspective. It's a fascinating conversation, and thank you guys.
You're welcome.
You're
Anytime.
welcome.
We're delighted you tuned in for today's episode of Ready, Set, Renovate, your guide design build resource. Are you ready for your home to undergo a transformation? We'd love to talk to you about it. Visit us at danielbuilders.com and tell us about the home renovation you envision. In the meantime, subscribe to Ready, Set, Renovate, and we'll keep the renovation inspiration coming.